Welcome to Blueprint to Billions, Leverage and Legacy in Apartments.
Welcome back to Season 2 of Blueprint to Billions, where legal strategy meets real estate scale. HUD attorney and multifamily housing strategist Terry Bruner has spent his career guiding developers, nonprofits, and investors through complex housing transactions with the focus on building both legacy and leverage. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're closing out Season 2 by going bigger than deals and dollars about legacy. Legacy is built over decades, and in this episode, Terry will explore what it really means to lead for the long term in real estate, in community, and in practice. This is legacy thinking. Terry Bruner, sir, welcome back. Good to see you.
Always good to see you, Evan.
Awesome stuff. Last episode, we talked about storms. Today, let's close out Season 2 with the bigger picture, and that's legacy thinking. What separates leaders who play for legacy from those who just close deals?
Oh man, that's a big question. um, the legacy players are the players who absolutely see themselves as long-term, maybe not holders, but they're going to be in this game for a long time. And so, as someone who intends to stay around a long time, you make different decisions and you move around the world in a very different way, much more intentional ways than you would if you're someone who basically has a flipper's mindset. And what I mean by that is if, for example, you know that you are acquiring properties as a part of a larger generational strategy where you're going to pass them down to your children or grandchildren, or even if you're not going to hold the asset, you're going to use those assets as leverage for then something else to then create a legacy in a different way. You then curate how you're sourcing deals, how you're closing deals, how you're building the team that's going to assist in those deals. You do all of those things from a much different lens than someone who's just looking for a quick hit. It's if you have someone who is just chasing a deal, for example, and maybe it's not the best, structure, maybe it's not the best deal, maybe there's just something funky about it, like the taxes or the interest rates are just something that are just completely unrealistic. But you think, well, I'm only going to have this thing for a year or two, and then I'm going to flip it around, I'm going to flip it over.
Right.
You then start making decisions that frankly can lead to cutting corners in a way that you wouldn't do or wouldn't make if you knew that this was something that was going to be yours for a longer period of time. So to me, and what I've experienced is that people who are in the ecosystem for the long haul, what they do is build much more intentionally and with a much different plan in mind than someone who is just looking at this myopic, narrow view of today and tomorrow.
What about you, Terry? How do you personally define legacy? Is it dollars? Is it deals? Is it something more personal? But what about you?
I look at it from the perspective of, number one, what is going to survive me? Like, what's going to outlive me? And then secondly, what actually brings me some modicum of joy in the process?
Right.
Now, joy is something that, it's very personal. Define that however you want it. I personally like to travel, for example. Right. So I'm intentional about, where I spend my time. Mm-hmm. I'm intentional about doing things that give me the opportunity to explore more, to, build in a different way. If I am just, if I'm just taking, a deal or a case, for example, because the fee is good, but it's going to distract me or in some way take me farther away from my end state of joy, it's probably not a decision that I'm going to make right now. And I'm very careful in saying that because I'm at a different career stage than a lot of people are. And I've certainly not always been there. So I've had to make, some compromises around what I actually want. But I will tell you this, life did not make sense. And even the practice and the business and the deal flow didn't actually make sense to me or get better until I was very intentional about defining what I wanted, who I wanted to be, and what needed to be true for me. So in terms of like what will outlive me, obviously, we all think about that in a capitalist perspective anyway. We think
Right.
about that as leaving some dollars and leaving some investments and leaving some assets, to our loved ones behind us. And that's obviously very, very important. But it's not just about that. I have the privilege of sitting on a foundation board also, and it's one of the most rewarding things that I do in my spare time, because we're giving money, the foundation's money, away to philanthropic and charitable causes that actually matter, and that
Right.
actually do things to uplift the community. And it's never lost on me that the founders of the foundation, they knew that at one point they would be no more, but they had the foresight enough to say, I want to do something that actually matters for this community and this place that I love. I want to do something that matters far beyond my time here. And so,
Mm.
literally, 3, 4 generations removed from them, what they did in their lifetime is still having impact. And I guess that's probably something that I think of very consistently, is the notion of impact. What does it mean to have impact? That to me is synonymous with legacy.
Hmm. Why do you believe legacy is built in decades or maybe time as opposed to transactions?
Well, look, this is strange for a transactional lawyer to say, but you can't go through every instance of life just thinking that things are transactional, meaning I'm going to do this one thing and then I'm going to move on to that thing. There's got to be a through line of sorts. And the through line for me with any of the deals that we work on is the consistency of the firm, the consistency of the client, the
Mhm.
consistency of the communities that we're working with. And that's not something that's going to necessarily just be built tomorrow. You can, for anyone listening to this, you can wake up and say, like, you can wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to be the greatest real estate lawyer there ever was.
Right.
That might very well come true for you, but it's probably not going to happen by 2026. It's or 2027. Whenever you're listening to this, it's probably going to happen for you over an expansive time that is
Right.
an accumulation of things that actually happen, each thing leading to the next. So I guess it's possible, that you could fall into great wealth on one deal, and that wealth then becomes the seed for you to grow and do all the other things that you want to do. But even with that one seed, the legacy is still going to be built with what you do with that seed, what's reproduced after that seed, not just the genesis of having that one seed. So I just think it's very short sighted for anyone to think that you're going to build a legacy in the short run. You can certainly build a reputation in the short run, but the legacy is only going to be established and sustained over time.
Hmm. Can you share one deal or project you hope people will point to as a part of your legacy, maybe?
It's hard to identify one in particular, just to be very transparent about it.
Mhm.
But I will say that the deals that I've worked on that I hope I'm remembered for are the deals where we actually leveraged a lot of different resources, and we leveraged a lot of different sources of people and finances to make something work in areas that otherwise wouldn't have gotten the attention for those particular developments. And I'll even say there's a local development that I had the privilege of working on a couple of years ago. It's actually going to be transformative in terms of housing options that are in an area that frankly hadn't seen anything new, anything new of the scale and and how nice this place is going to be. They hadn't seen this in more than a generation. To be a
Wow.
part of that project and others like it, those are the things that I'm going to remember, even if they weren't the biggest fees, and even if there were bigger deals that I've worked on. Those are the things that I'm going to remember and want people to remember, because it took a lot more doing. Like the deal that I'm talking about, it literally had 3 or 4 different funding sources, which was a lot of work, but
Wow.
I think it's going to be meaningful for the people who ultimately live there.
Awesome. So for listeners, how can they start thinking in legacy terms no matter where they're starting at in their life?
Well, I think you start where you are, number one.
Right.
So you start thinking about with the resources that you have at your disposal right now, not just financial, but resources broadly, could be your network, could be what you're interested in, whatever that is. I think you start using that now, and then you start asking yourself questions that are very basic. I mean, very rudimentary in some ways. 3 years from now, what do I hope to be true for me? 5 years from now, what do I hope to be true for me? 10 years from now, if I had my wildest set of dreams, what would be true for me? I think you start asking yourself those questions now, and you store them away, but you store them away in some place that has meaning, like you don't just put them someplace that you bury them. I mean, a lot of people are big on vision boards.
Right.
I've done them. I've done them, but it's not necessarily how I operate. But if that's your thing, whatever is going to give you salience long term, so that it's fresh, you continue to remind yourself of it. I would start there, and then based on what your interests are, really asking yourself, if everything went the way that I wanted it to go, and I'm interested in this thing or that thing, what would legacy look like for me doing this thing? So if you're an interior designer, for example, and you say, hey, I want to, ultimately, do custom curated living rooms for people. Well, what would legacy look like for you? What would legacy look
Right.
like in that instance? I think, for me, legacy is some combination of the work that I do for clients, but it's also in terms of the firm that I founded, and making sure that it's as sustainable and as healthy as it can possibly be, so that those things allow me then to build other parts of the legacy that I want. But I think in terms of real estate and in terms of the HUD work we do, only you can define what that legacy needs to be for you and how you want that legacy to progress. But I think there are any number of opportunities, particularly because there, look, there's not a great clamoring for people to say, like, I'm going to build a legacy doing HUD work. They
Hmm.
exist, obviously, but it's not necessarily something that you're going to find, advertised on a billboard in Times Square. So the sky really is yours, but it's about being intentional and starting where you are, and then being intentional about where you want that legacy to exist. What is it? What do you want that to be?
Hmm. And for lawyers especially, why is creating your own niche practice part of building your legacy, not just your income?
So it's one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. When I was at a conference last year, and our firm sponsored was one of the sponsors of that conference, and I had a shirt on, polo, kind of like this, that had the firm's logo on it. And someone came up to me and they said, "Hey, are you Terry?" I said, "Yeah." And they was like, "No, from the logo over there. This is a small conference, but it's the coolest thing, because someone was able to make the connection of the name of the firm, me, and like, here I am with this logo. Why is that unique, and why is that significant? I mean, it's obviously a neat thing to say, I built this, with a lot of
Yeah.
blood, sweat, and tears, and obviously in my case, with a lot of God's help. But not only is it cool just to think about that, but it's something totally different than just saying, I am a lawyer who works at, X firm or whatnot. And there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
But for me, as I said earlier, it's a part of my legacy play. It's something so that my family will be able to say, not only did we have a hand in building this, but it's something that actually stands for the broader principles and values that we hold dear. So if I'm talking to any, young lawyer, or any lawyer who just has a dream to go out and do something on their own,
Right.
the message from the niche practice is basically, you can own the life that you want to own, and you can be empowered to go build something beyond just what you've been trained to do. That's how the greatest legacies in America have been built. That's how some of the greatest legacies in the world have been built. It starts with not only a dream, but it starts with something tangible. So for me, the firm is a tangible representation of the legacy that I'm trying to help clients build through their real estate endeavors.
Mm. Do you have a myth maybe about legacy that you want to debunk for people?
Yeah, we talked about one of them earlier, which is, you can just, legacy can be built like, yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, that that's not true. I think the other big myth that I hear commonly is usually when people use that word legacy, they start thinking of the Rockefellers
Right.
or the Vanderbilts or
Right.
the Carnegies. That's what they start. That's what you think of. And sure enough, yes, those are legacies that in some ways are incomparable.
It's true.
But legacy also starts with much smaller, simpler things. Maybe it's the house that your grandparents, scrimped and saved for, and they passed it down to your father, who then still maintains the house, and now it's yours. Maybe it's the land that was tilled by your great grandparents, and they passed it along, and that land is still in your family and you're still doing things with it. Maybe you have some sort of, vested interest there. Maybe you have some livestock there. Maybe it's something as simple as, hey, this is where I went to school and my brother went to school there and now his kids are going to school there, my kids are going to school there, and it continues for generations after. It can be something as small as those examples, but it actually starts from very tangible places, and then where it goes from that the kernel of that beginning tangible thing, who knows? But you got to start someplace, and
Mm.
starting at that place is so critical, and so it's so defining of not only who you are but who you can become. And the myth that I think people have is that it always starts off as this grandiose thing.
Mhm.
Oftentimes it starts with something very, very small. Like I just wanted to I wanted to, grow okra. And then that okra, garden becomes like the biggest farm in Nebraska or something. And I'm totally hypothetical, right? But I'm saying it usually starts very small and then it grows into something much, much bigger.
Hmm. So Terry, looking ahead, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for generational wealth and community building maybe in the next 10 years?
Real estate. HUD deals, right? No,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of just leveraging land and real estate for highest and best use. I'm always saying that land is a great aggregator, and real estate is a great leverage point to build wealth. I don't think that's going to change. That's not to say that it's the only thing out there. It's not. There are plenty of other things that you can use to build wealth and legacy. But from my bailiwick, I don't think there's ever been a better time. I don't think there's ever been a better opportunity to go out and acquire a piece of this thing that is America. And hey, there are even opportunities for you to do that outside of America. Wherever you're listening and wherever you are, they're not making any more land, as I've said before. So why not start there, which is a fungible commodity, and then go forward from there. So
Mm.
I think some combination of land use, of real estate, of multifamily building, all of those things somewhere in that vein, that to me seems like one of the best places to actually get started building a legacy, in the next how many ever years.
And Terry, and finally, as we wrap up season two, what's the blueprint you want every listener to walk away with?
Big question. Um, I really want people to understand that number one, the government plays a huge role in the economy that is the real estate economy in our country. There's a reason for that because there is no more public benefit and good than for us as a people, as a community, as a nation to have adequate, sustainable, decent, affordable housing. That's number one. I think number two, we need to stop looking at deals simply because they have big dollar signs on them as out of reach or as somewhat unapproachable for those for those who are rank and file. Maybe it's not approachable to you personally, but it could be very approachable if we aggregated the right resources and leverage the right people to get things done. There's always an opportunity, and there's always a chance, and there's always something to be, to be done in this particular realm. So I think understanding that and having that mindset really is important. And then I think the third one is just that word, it's mindset. If there's one thing that I have come to understand that is the biggest differentiator between those who do and those who don't, it starts between your ears. It is absolutely what's between your ears. Because if you can convince yourself that it can be done, chances are you'll marshal the resources and the research and the right things to go get those things done. But it all starts there.
Terry Bruner, sir, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Good stuff, guys. And thank you for tuning in to Blueprint to Billions. If you're navigating HUD-backed development and want to elevate your credibility from day one, connect with Terry Bruner at terrybrunerlaw.com. And if you're an attorney looking to build legal practices on your own term, outside of the big firm pressure and into a niche that actually reflects your values, check out Terry's course at thenichepractice.com. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone that might find this information helpful as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.